welcome to another live post-game reaction show. The Toronto Maple Leafs have just left the ice after a 4-3 overtime victory in Tampa Bay versus the Tampa Bay Lightning. This is the Toronto Sports Rush Network, brought to you by Bet Rivers. My name is Kyle Andrew, and I'm joined once again by NHL analyst and legend, Mr. Pierre McGuire. Pierre, that was a big extra point to take from Tampa Bay down in Florida tonight.
Oh, that was old school. That was a ton of fun to watch. You had goaltending for both teams. You had highly explosive offensive thrusts by both teams. You had some timely goals scored by both teams. The top line, obviously, Matthew Knies was just fantastic when you think about it. So you look at it, Matthew Knies, Austin Matthews, Mitchell Marner, the top guys came to play, and the top guys came to play for Tampa as well.
Yeah, and the Leafs, it was just a very different team on the ice tonight. Very different compared to what we saw in Florida last night, but playing a very different team. They came out absolutely red hot tonight. I wasn't sure what we were going to see after those first 3 or 4 minutes, but they really set the tone early.
Coach Berube must have had some choice words after the game last night. Their physical play was better. Their rush defense was better. Their exits out of the zone were better. Their crease clearing was a lot better. Their face-off play was better, and their shot blocking was better.
Yeah, it was just an absolute blanketing early on in the game. But as they can do, they responded quickly to level things off, at least maybe not on the scoreboard, but certainly in the pace of play. And then throughout most of the game, other than a stretch in the third period, it was pretty back and forth. As you said, old school playoff style hockey. And the Leafs corrected so many of the errors tonight. And let's talk about one of the little things they did tonight, the exact inverse of last night. They were incredible on the draw tonight, and they were absolutely terrible, especially Tavares, unquestionably so, or
So,
irregularly so last night.
so you have to think that they had a meeting about it,
Yeah.
whether it was Austin Matthews or it was John Tavares, whether it was Max Domi. They clearly had a meeting about it. They talked about their face-off play. They had better support from the wingers. They had better support from the defensemen. And you can see, I mean, they won almost 61% of the faceoffs tonight against a Tampa team that's usually very good in faceoff play.
Let's key in on a few of the best players on the ice tonight. And of course, once again for the Toronto Maple Leafs, it starts between the pipes. Stolarz had an excellent game, and he made all the saves he needed to make and then some.
Kyle, he was outstanding. I mean, it could have been in the first period, could have been the second period, the third period into overtime. Now, I think Kucherov missed an empty net in overtime. That being said, and people are going to say, what about the 4 goalposts in the first period? Okay, I'll cede you that. But what about some of the saves that Anthony Stolarz made? Kyle, you couldn't be more appropriate on your comment about him. The truth of the matter is he was a massive game breaker for Toronto because if he doesn't come up with some of those timely saves, that game's over.
It's impossible to put your head in or put your thoughts into the head of these Maple Leaf players. But when you have him, when you have Wall behind you playing so well, you can play so calmly and play your game in front of them without playing in panic mode. And I mean, it seems down the stretcher, maybe Stolarz is emerging as the guy. He's winning these big games. He's seeing all the right teams and he's playing them exceptionally well. But he wasn't the only one on the ice tonight that was stealing the show. Knies had a hat trick, and he closed it off in overtime for them after a remarkable back and forth stretch in that overtime tonight.
No, there's no question. Matthew Knies, for whatever reason, he loves whatever's going on in Tampa. He loves playing against them. That guy just unbelievable success against the Tampa Bay Lightning. That line was great. What a start by Mitchell Marner. What a start by Austin Matthews. What a start by Matthew Knies. So those guys came to play. They were probably humiliated with some of the efforts from last night in Florida. That's going to happen from time to time. Florida was a little bit upset too. They hadn't won in a long time. So I get it. I get it. I think the biggest thing we saw tonight, parts of a Toronto Maple Leafs team that if they play like that all the time, Kyle, they could be very, very dangerous in the playoffs.
Exactly, because they had the high octane guys were doing the high octane things tonight. And it wasn't just that, like not just finishing the play and putting the puck in the net, the forecheck. There was a stretch in the third period tonight, coming on the heels in the end of that the double minor. Even after the minors ended and stuff, they were controlling the play in the other end so well, and that was driven by those high octane guys and the other lines keeping the puck deep, tiring Tampa Bay out. Tampa Bay, to their credit, their poise and their experience got them out of that scenario. But it was the high octane guys tonight putting the pucks in the net. It was the goaltending but then it was also players like Benoit. I don't even know how many shot blocks Benoit finished with. I think a little bit more than the Leafs posts, but he had an absolute pile of shot blocks and he was throwing himself in front of it all night long. And the combination of the high octane offense with those little details, it was a good hockey game for the Toronto Maple Leafs and their fans.
And think about it when Jake McCabe comes back and helps. So you're going to have Benoit, you're going to have Jake McCabe, you're going to have Chris Tanev, you're going to have Brandon Carlo. You got guys that are stoppers in the back end forever, for the longest time. And I'm not trying to pick on any other regimes. The Toronto Maple Leafs couldn't stop people in the playoffs, and that's why they lost. And that's why they lost a lot of game sevens. They can stop people now. They can stop them because they've got stoppers on the back end. They got shot blocking that you correctly talk about, Kyle, and they've got goaltending. And they've got depth in goal, which is really important.
Yeah, and it seems like there's not a lot of holes, but I want to go back to the first game of this back-to-back road trip right now, last night, because I don't often do this, but I did peruse social media a bit after last night's loss. It was not pretty. It was words I wouldn't read to my own mother. It was a lot of things to describe the Leafs play. It was shades of panicked Leafs fan bases from the past. What causes a team to come out flat at the start of a 2-game back-to-back like that and then appear to be such a different hockey team? My question is basically, is it the suffocating way Florida plays and them having the guys back last night? Is it the Leafs tired from the travel, tired because it's late in the season, or just sometimes the team is flat?
Well, I think it's a combination. I think the team was a bit flat. I think the Florida Panthers were angry. They got Sasha Barkov back, who they hadn't had in a little while. They wanted to prove a point. They're a championship caliber team. And Toronto didn't have anywhere close to an A game. So you're going into a rough environment. You're going against a potential opponent for the playoffs. You're going against a group that's really angry at the whole league right now because of what's happened with some of their players. And so it was a tough night. Look, that was a tough night. Was Toronto terrible? They weren't terrible.
No.
But did they bring their battle level like they did tonight? They did not. Their battle level was high tonight in Tampa. It was really impressive.
It was impressive and it was very evident and very obvious. And I mean, I feel like we've done so many of these shows now, Pierre, these post games. We're often talking very quietly about the effect Berube has on this team and his ability to have them rebound from those disappointing, it's not world crushing performance in Florida last night, as you say. They lost to the defending cup champions in a close match with an empty netter for Polish at the end. And it just seems as though their ability to rebound is something they haven't had in the past. And a stat that stood out tonight that wasn't the case for the Leafs. They're number 1 in the league in 1-goal games. As of tonight, they're 24-4 in 1-goal games. That's maturity, calmness, and coaching.
100%. And the other part too that I think is really important, they're playing a style that allows you to win in tight checking games in the playoffs. You're not going to win a lot of 7-6 games or 6-5 games in the playoffs. You're going to have to play a lot of 2-1 games, 3-2 games, 4-3 games. So you correctly talk about last night in Florida, South Florida, it's an empty netter. So it's a 2-1 game. It's a tighter game than what the score indicates. You watch tonight, that's a very hard hockey game. Toronto gets a 2-0 lead. They're looking good. Some fortuitous breaks go their way as well off the post, but they didn't quit on the game. When that thing was 2-2, I think a Leaf team 2 years ago or 3 years ago would have quit on that game. They would have said, oh, well, it's not working out tonight. We're just going to mail it. Their coach won't let them do it. Their leadership won't let them do it. The guys that are playing on the back end won't let them do it. I think this is a totally different team.
It certainly seems like it. It's hard to speculate about the way things will go in the playoffs and stuff like that. But as you say tonight, when that game got tied up, I'm pretty sure had I just opened my window tonight, I would have heard the collective sigh of, "Oh, here we go," from the whole fan base, because what I'm seeing this year, stepping outside of game and analyzing the game, perhaps stepping outside of that, is in the past where they would have stumbled and fed the fan base's negativity, they've recovered again and again and again. And I keep harping on it because I'm trying to, the point we're making here is this team looks different. And we're only 4 more games from the playoffs right now.
You know what I thought was really cool tonight, just to build off your point, Cal? Watch Willie Nylander. There's sequences in that game where Willie Nylander wants to grab the game by its throat and just dominate the game.
Yes.
Now, there have been other years where you say, Willie's a really good player, but why isn't Willie taking the game over? You couldn't say that about Willie tonight. Willie wanted to take that game over. He did some fantastic things in that game. He won't get rewarded with any points, but he did some fantastic things. That's just one example of why I think this team is different.
It's 100%. And to stay on Nylander, I have in my notes there was a late play where he was in alone. He was stick handling, a little indecisive about what to do with it. He still got a good shot on goal. Vasilevsky was great tonight. He made a really good
Yep.
save. But in the past, the Nylander who, he's going to beat himself up for that because he didn't probably get his best shot off. He jumped right back into the play, and it's like his mental part of his game ability to switch off those mistakes. If you're going to be a near 50 goal scorer, you're going to flub it sometimes. And his ability to just step back into his role and play both ways on the ice, he's really, really changed this season. That's one thing I've noticed in his game.
We agree. And I think one of the greatest impacts on him, Cal, has been John Tavares.
Yeah.
I can't say enough about Johnny. Johnny's take. I know he's not the captain anymore. I get it, and I think the way he handled that's a big reason why this team is the way it is. By the way, but John's playing with so much decorum and so much talent and so much desire. I think he knows this is one of his best last chances to win the cup. I really believe that. And that's not a knock on any of the other players, but I think John Tavares is trying to show the way to all these players.
It's very true, Pierre. And the leader, it's just the emergence of leadership. I mean, earlier on in the season, we're talking about, like, obviously Matthews is on a very different goal pace this year, but he might arguably be a better all-around hockey player this season. And they have so much firepower in that team, they don't need him to score 70 goals.
No, Austin's playing a lot better. How about the shot block? And I
Yeah.
know Marner doesn't get it out, and eventually Tampa ties the game. But that's Austin Matthews blocking a shot. If you're going to tell me 3 years ago he's doing that, I'm going to say no, not before the playoffs. He's not. He's just going to be saving himself for the playoffs. But he did it. That impresses me. These guys have changed. I think part of it's Berube. I think part of it's frustration from losing for so many years. And I think part of it is the way John Tavares handled the losing of the captaincy and the way he transitioned it over to Austin Matthews.
Yeah, and let's look ahead a little bit now. I covered it with EJ last night too, but let's go ahead because on a night-to-night basis in the NHL right now, everything is changing. The standings are shifting rapidly. People are shuffling new position. They're going into Montreal. Oh, sorry, they're at home against Montreal on Saturday night. A big classic original six matchup with very, very serious playoff implications.
They are. And you know what? The big thing is if Montreal goes into Ottawa and wins there, Ottawa's got to be looking in the rearview mirror saying objects are a lot closer than they appear. And so that's going to put a lot of onus on Ottawa and Montreal tomorrow to play well. But also, the biggest thing about Montreal, and I've been watching them the entire year, like probably a lot of fans that are watching us right now. Montreal's biggest thing is they are a team.
Yeah.
It's not one or two or three guys. Yeah, Lane Hudson's great, and yeah, Nick Suzuki's great. But if you watch Christian Dvorak win faceoffs, if you watch Josh Anderson kill penalties, if you watch Brendan Gallagher forecheck, if you watch Alex Carey and Michael Matheson match up against the other team's top players, Montreal's a team. Doesn't mean they have the best players. And I don't think if you did a paper for paper, Montreal's roster versus Toronto's roster, Toronto would win. But I'm telling you, Montreal's a team, and they're going to be really tough to play against the entire playoff.
100%, but we don't play the games on paper. We play the games with heart, and we play the game. It's a momentum sport because, these conversations about Montreal were unthinkable 2 months ago. And
No.
here we are going, this is who wants to play these guys in the playoffs? It's
Kyle,
incredible.
there are two teams in the league you don't want to play in the first round. One of them's the St. Louis Blues. Like, can you imagine if you're finishing at the top, whether you're Winnipeg or whether you're Vegas, let's just say, and you got to play St. Louis? What did they play you're saying, what did we play the regular season for? Like, this is our prize because we're
Yeah.
one of the best teams. We get to
Home
play
ice.
these guys. And yeah, exactly. And it's the same with Montreal. If Montreal finds a way to get in, and sure, it looks like they will,
Yeah.
I'm not sure they're going to be a ton of fun to play against. And that city, and I'm from there, I can tell you they're going crazy there. They are
They're
going
re-
in a good way, not a bad way.
And if there's one way to get a fan base incredibly hyped up for a playoff run, it's be ahead of schedule on a rebuild, on a team that's restructuring, and they're young and they're hungry and they're fast and they're, I feel like they're a little bit ahead of schedule in all of this, but we'll find out very, very soon. It's going to be very interesting. And back to the Leafs, you want to grab home ice, you want to grab the advantage on the line changes and stuff like that. But do they have, just logistically speaking, who do they want to see in the first round right now? Like, who's their best matchup that's
I
on
don't.
the
It's
table?
a good question. Some people would say Montreal.
Mhm.
Some people might say Ottawa. I don't know, but here's what I do know. I would not want to be in that 2-3 hole. I don't want to
Okay.
have to play Tampa or Florida in the first round. If you can avoid it, doesn't mean you're gonna, but if you can, I'd try to stay away from playing either one of those two teams in the first round. Let them beat each other up. Let them
I
go have some fun.
I think if you're the Leafs and you have to face Florida in a 7-game series, you want a few miles on their playoff odometer before you get there,
Agreed.
because they're going to be a tough out. They're going to have more guys back in the lineup. I believe Ekblad's back in for the third game of the
I
playoffs.
believe you, Hunt. Yes, I believe you're right.
And that, no one wants to play the defending cup champions, but certainly not the Toronto Maple Leafs, because it's been my opinion that they don't match up terribly well for them when Florida's flying a full board across the board there. So I don't know that there's so much parity now, as you say, like who wants to play St. Louis in the other conference and who wants to play Montreal here? That's 1 to 8. It barely matters anymore. It's a line change thing.
Well, people forget 2 years ago, the Florida Panthers were an 8 seed playing against a Boston Bruin team that was a 1 seed, and Florida went into Boston, won a game seven. And
Yeah.
the rest is history. Look at these guys. They've become a juggernaut ever since. They really have been. If they lose that series, I don't know how relevant the Florida Panthers are for a long time. I mean that because you're not going to get free agents going there. It's going to be a different kind of a deal, if you know what I'm saying. But they found a way to win, and then look what happened. They are one of the esteemed teams in the league right now. They really are.
That's such a great point you make there, Pierre, because I mean, in talking to EJ like this, we were talking about the Maple Leafs, what they need now. I mean, they have a very good chance to win this division, get home ice advantage at this point, but they do need a signature playoff win that tells these guys, yes, we can. And
Mm.
they've won a playoff series over the last few years. They haven't made it real deep, and they've just wasn't a lot of signature moments in there. And I feel like they need a win like what you just described, a big game 7 comeback or a big road win or something like that, to really allow them to look in the mirror and go, wait a second, we are one of the best teams in the NHL and we can play with anybody.
I agree, and that's why I think tonight was important. You lose last night. How do you rebound against a rested team like Tampa, who are coming back from obviously a win in New York? They didn't play yesterday. Toronto did. Toronto played against a real good team, the defending Stanley Cup champs. So what did Toronto do? They got a lead. They played great. They see that lead dissipate. They found a way to get the lead again. They lose it again. Then they show up and they compete like hard as you can in overtime, and they win the game. I think these are all building blocks they can look back on and say, you know what, we're a good team going to the playoffs. We're a real good team.
Yeah, and you have to figure, so they've got, the schedule is a little tough for them. They just finished a back to back in which, they grabbed 2 points tonight. Great. We got another back to back this Saturday and Sunday. And the
Mhm.
Sunday game is a travel game and it's at 5 p.m.
In
against a very good
Carolina. Yeah.
Carolina team that plays them really well. But you have to think, looking even, I know they're going to play game to game. Their coach is going to keep them in line. But you'd like to think, looking into next week, they'd like to sit guys versus the Red Wings, get them rested, and if they need to grab 2 points, put it all on the line in Buffalo on Tuesday, but hopefully rest some guys or just lower their minutes or something on Thursday before the playoffs start.
Well, I think it's a great point. I think a lot of teams would love to have the luxury of doing that. One of the things that's happened this year, and it's not a knock on anybody, the Four Nations event, it's taken a lot out of a lot of the better players on some of these playoff teams that are being counted on to be so good. And that's why your point is so relevant, Kyle. It really is. Some of these guys do need a little bit of a breather. They just do. And I can tell you, I've been in the NHL 35 years, a long time. I've never seen hockey played at the tempo that it was played at in the Four Nations, and I just don't know if that's sustainable for elite players to do that. Over let's say 5 to 8 game schedule over 14 days. I just don't know if that's sustainable.
We can look no further than the team they lost to last night, losing arguably their most important player from a heart and soul and grit,
Yeah.
which is so aligned with Florida's style, have to check out of the lineup because of an injury sustained in the Four Nations. I'm actually not sure when they expect him back, if they expect him back, or
Yeah, I
for when
don't
it's
know
going to be.
either. That's a pretty closely guarded secret right now. It really
Well,
is.
as it should be from their end as well. But missing him going into the playoffs, that's a heart and soul and great. That's a guy built for playoff hockey. And if the Four Nations took him away for all of the incredible marketing it was for the league, there's going to be long conversations about that because we're seeing the effects of it now.
No question. No question about it. And what's going to be interesting, it's not just this year. Next year you got the Olympics and they're overseas. And so
Yeah.
that's gonna sap guys even more. It's good. This little period of time here in the National Hockey League is a very interesting time because they also have to negotiate a collective bargaining agreement, and I think there's going to be expansion. So there's a lot of moving parts with this whole thing in the National Hockey League right now.
It's very interesting because hockey's had a very, very good season from a marketing and PR point of view,
Yes.
but there's still a lot of moving parts to keep that momentum going in that collective bargaining agreement. It's not relevant to the current playoff picture, but it's relevant to the health of the game long term. And, it's going to determine a lot of how we have these discussions in the future and the type of hockey we see.
Couldn't agree
Uh,
more.
so the Leafs have now won 5 or 6 games. Leaf Nation's quieted online. They're going into 2 more tough games, and then 2 not as tough games in the year. There's no such thing as a gimme in the modern NHL, but we ideally like to have them rest guys over those last 2 games if they have the luxury to do so, and then going back home. Should they start the playoffs at home, and it's looking increasingly likely that they could. What is you know, what is Berube calling on from them and their style of play? How is he keeping them as calm as they've been this whole year? Because it's a different beast in the playoffs, especially in that media market.
Yeah,
What's a
no,
few things he's going to float to them?
it is. Well, first of all, the players know they can trust them and the staff because they've all been to the final and they've all won the cup. Even Lane Lambert won the cup in Washington.
Yeah.
People forget about that. So the players can look behind the bench and say, you know what, all these guys have been at the top of the mountain and the view's pretty good. So they trust them. They trust them, which is really important. That's one thing. Second thing is I think that he understands he's now got them playing a style of hockey that can allow them to win in the playoffs. And third, I think they're starting to get their depth players figured out. Where does Max Domi fit in? Where does Scott Lawton fit in? Where does Pontus Holmberg fit in? Where does Stevie Lorenz fit in? I think they've done a really good job identifying where guys fit in, which is really important.
Yeah, it seems like the newest additions from the trade deadline there, they are really finding their legs, finding their roles with the Leafs. They're, they're supporting cast at this point, but I thought Carlo was good out there tonight. He was cutting off the lanes. He prevented guys from getting into the lane. Lawton was all over the ice, didn't produce a ton, but he's not taking away in play the way it was when he first arrived, which is just an adjustment to a new team. They are firing on all cylinders despite last night's loss. And, it seems like this team, 2 goalies playing well, one particularly playing well, 4 lines playing well. Everything's clicking. I don't want
Well,
to jinx it for them,
it's
but
it's exciting. I
it is.
felt this team from the start of the year to now was one of the better stories in the league because a lot of people said, "Oh no, not this again." But they've made some really, getting Tanev was a really good pickup. Getting Oliver Ekman Larson was a really good pickup. Getting Brandon Carlo was a really good pickup. Getting Jake McCabe 100% healthy has been really helpful for their team. And I think Simone Benoit is one of the most improved guys in the league.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm telling you, they're going to be a beast to play against in the playoffs if you're a star player on the opposition. Because in every tandem, they got somebody that can do something different to eliminate you. And that's hard to play against. That's really hard to play against.
We just had a graphic up on the screen here too. Stellaris has now won 7 of his last 8 road games. That's an
Wow.
important stat for the playoffs
It's
because
huge.
to win a series, typically a team that can have a goalie steal a road game, you're going to be sitting really pretty in a series.
100%. That's really a good point. He's been tremendous. He has to be considered one of the bargain basement, unbelievable success stories from last summer with free agency. It just has to be.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know how much the key to the city he will be getting if they play late into May is worth, but he should probably sell it and buy himself something fancy. Well, Pierre, we've had the way the season's winding down here, the tightness of the NHL playoff races right often to the last day. It's made for such exciting hockey. We've had such incredible, as we just discussed, display by the league this year. We had Ovechkin score the big goal this week, and it's just everything is clicking on all cylinders. And unfortunately, around the NHL this week, we have lost some people and prominent figures in the game. The hockey community is so tightly knit. It would be remiss of us to not acknowledge them. But just today, the hockey world lost your friend Ray Shero.
Kyle, he was an amazing man. He was really smart. He was an amazing athlete. He really understood the sport at a level that most people will never understand it. And a big part of that is because who his father was, the late Fred Shero, the legendary coach of the Philadelphia Flyers and the New York Rangers. Ray and I have been friends for 40 years. We spent a lot of great nights together on the road watching hockey players as young as probably 10 years old and as old as 45 or 50. I never had a bad day in the rink with him. I never had a bad day on the road with him. And I had a lot of amazing conversations with him over all the time. He's a treasure. The Pittsburgh Penguins were very fortunate to hire him away before another NHL team got him, and he paid him off by getting him to do Stanley Cup final, and then obviously winning in 2009. The hockey world lost somebody way too young, Ray Shero, a life lost far too early.